Fiona Wright.
Thank you, Patty. I want to live in a world where workplace stress is a thing of the past. From the most recent published national statistics, stress accounted for 43% of days off of work. And this was put down to workload pressures, impending deadlines, lack of support from managers, and I'd also add to that being bullied, because I've been there. Now, I don't know about you, but for all the hours that I spend in an office and even working at home in my own business, I want to feel happy in what I'm doing. I don't want to feel overwhelmed, stressed, because that leaves me tired, frustrated, and without energy. And that only results in poorer productivity and losing quality of life outside of work. So you'll be glad to know that it doesn't have to be this way. It's not what happens, but how you respond. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm condoning poor behaviour at work or poor management, but it's the poor management and the stress, the suffering caused by stress is actually as a result of how you respond, not by what's going on around you. So 2.5 years ago, I started learning about something that changed my life. And this is something I now teach in my workshop, Stress Less, Achieve More. Because that feeling is not created, that feeling of stress is not created by the things outside of you. So there's a couple of important points that I'd like to demonstrate with a personal example, if I may. So, just over 4 years ago, I got myself a new job. Because I was so stressed in the old job, I really thought that if I got a new job, the stress would go away. Well, guess what? I was wrong. I only managed to replace the stress from one job with a different stress. A few days before I left that job, I was diagnosed with a recurrence of cancer. Now, you're probably thinking, oh my God, what could be more stressful than being diagnosed with cancer a second time? Well, I can say it wasn't much fun, but here's the crazy bit. It wasn't the cancer, the impending operation, or even the possibility of having chemotherapy again that replaced that workplace stress. That stress was replaced by another work-related stress. What will I do if they pull the contract and I lose my new job? It's totally irrational, isn't it, as a response to cancer? But that's because at that moment, I was in an irrational space. By the time I got home from hospital, my head was full of fearful, manic thoughts about losing my livelihood. And that's why I got an irrational response. I was under a huge misunderstanding about where my fear was coming from. But the beauty of this story is, and also the second point, that in the precise moment that I was given that diagnosis, which could have been devastating news, thankfully it's not because I'm still here, my mind was clear because I was being kept safe by the most important thing that we often overlook. My innate wisdom kept my mind clear in that moment, and instead I got fresh insight rather than fear. The precise thing that I thought in that moment was, I wonder how I turn this around. Now, I had no answer for that at the time, but it didn't matter because a seed had been sown, and that's what was important. Because it's not what happens, it's about how you respond. 2.5 years ago, I started learning about the principles behind human experience. And what I learnt is something that is as unquestionable as the principle of gravity. Your feelings only come, your response only comes from thought taking form in the moment. It doesn't come from anything around you. And that's great news, because it lets us off the hook. We don't have to be worried about events that happen, what other people say, or anything like that. So what I want to say is, Sydney Banks said, if people could only learn to not be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. It's not about what happens, it's about how you respond. Thank you.
Well done, Fiona. I mean, that was quite deep, and I like it how you say that it's not the environment, it's all in us and how we react to that special given moment. So let's hear it from the judges.
I can go
Sophie, do you want to start this time? Cool.
Well done.
Thank you.
That was really insightful, and again, what you went through, and I'm really glad that you're better.
Thank
and
you.
You're still here with us.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to think about the connection to the title for me. That was not quite, it said stress less, and I understood the message that you were getting to, but I didn't feel it was really the nugget of your talk. Mm-hmm. I think for me it was around how you dealt with the situation, but there's an element of me saying, so what about the stress less? I get it, but I'm not quite sure where I'm going with it. Does that make sense? And I think one of the key things for me is as a listener is to have that fundamental message to take away, and for me it wasn't quite there. You did really, really well, and I really liked your style as well. So again, it was a really nice, soft, gentle storytelling style, and I think that really worked for you. But well done.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing talk. I think your presence on stage, I wrote down amazing, like, great presence. Volume up slightly was like the first thing. I was just like, oh, just that tiny little notch up, and because your actual stage presence was fantastic, your tone of voice was like for the most part absolutely perfect. And I think to lead on from Sophie is you can clarify the message by changing the tone of your voice slightly. So you can come to the end of the stress message part at the beginning, because it sort of went stress and then your story about it, the story behind it, and then back to the message at the end. And I think if you clearly were like bang, like with an uptone, like again that sort of moment where the audience go, ah, yeah, and then you go bang, there's my example of it, then there's the conclusion at the end. So that was just that little bit of tone, but I thought that's all I got. Like, it was great. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Elliot?
Yeah. So, good. Well done. I think that's one of the most present talks I've seen you've done in a while. I really felt that you were here, that it was you speaking, and you were fully owning the message, the story. I agree there was a disconnect between the name and where you wanted to lead us. The stretch I would give you is it was still very about you and not enough for us as an audience to take away. And that's okay, because you're immersing. I just feel that when you got 5 minutes and you want to create impact, sometimes it's worth pulling back a couple of and just giving us more nuggets so we can enroll more into you, especially into the type of work you do. And what you're talking about is a really interesting topic, because it's a lot of cognitive work, it's a lot of our thoughts. And I know you've done work in a certain area of that. I would suggest just for you, for when you have other skeptics or other people in the room, for you to come across as the expert is understand different experts' approach to the topic. Like, Albert Ellis would be a great person for you to research, because he looks at the 3 levels of expectations: self, others, world, which has a massive impact on thoughts and cognitive work. So that's just a tip for you to further assert yourself as an expert in this space. But in terms of the talk, I thought, great. It's really nice to see you speak and not the, with the past, the masky Fiona, and just make it more about, us, so we have more takeaways. But good job, well done.